compile the information that we have in Kebreo top, which is, I believe, registered in Egypt, and I will show you some information on that. Okay, it's a downy mildew and powdery mildew product of choice that's formulated in one. Okay, did you know downy mildew can attack any part of the vine? So it can attack the clusters, it can attack the rhapis, it can attack most parts of the vine, the leaves of course, and severe foliar infection causes early defoliation and eventually sunburn, and it can even take up to 100% of your crop, depending on what time of the year it gets it. Generally, early in the season, it can take a whole bunch in no time. Later on in the season, it tends to take a portion of the bunch, and for that demonstration trial I was telling you about earlier on, we also demonstrated some of our downy mildew products. And we had overhead irrigation, so to get more downy mildew going, just for the trial for the purpose of the trial. So this is what it can do. It can take out the entire bunch, and that's your typical lesion. Remember, powdery mildew, the photograph I showed you earlier on, grows on the top of the leaf, always on the surface, and downy mildew, always like that on the underside. I'm sure you all know what we call the oil spot is the first symptom before it goes over into the sporulation of the downy. Okay, so how do we avoid downy and powdery mildew and maximize your yield? I'm going to discuss this product, and I'm going to discuss these various points, the unique formulation of the two AIs, dimetamorph and F500, the mode of action of these two active ingredients, resistance management, and I think that's a very important point, especially with the fact that we have F500, the watch-outs, time of application, use rate, the efficacy and performance. So I'm going to show you some results, the registration in Egypt, and then registration of these active ingredients in other parts of the world, and then the key benefits. So when you look at the unique formulation of the two AIs, we have dimetamorph on the one side, and we have the F500. So let's look at the dimetamorph first. It's a very systemic product. It is a really good product. It's been around for almost 20 years. Most of the life cycle stage, and I've mentioned with Vivondo, we will look at this one as well, exactly where in the life cycle dimetamorph works, and it works on the oomycetes, and it affects most of the growth stage, mycelium growth and sporulation. Preventative and curative, so it's a very good one as well to use if you do have downy mildew to get some kind of kickback action as well. Excellent crop safety, and it, as I say, for the control of plasmi, which is the code we use for Plasmapara viticola, it's been around for 20 years. So F500, the other product in the formulation, is translaminar. It's not as systemic as dimetamorph, but it's also not a bad thing, because then you get cover over the whole areas that you want to cover on the plant. If it's too systemic, it just moves to the ends, acropetally, to the tops of the leaves. So to have good cover with something that is just translaminar means if it lands on top, it can move down to, and you can pick it up underneath as well. Strong effect on zoospore germination and mycelial growth, which is the various growth stages, preventative and curative, should be used. We always encourage to use our fungicides preventatively, although they have got curative action. It's always better to fight against disease when it's still in the very early stages. Once it gets the upper hand, then it becomes a battle, and that again becomes very expensive because you've got to reduce your intervals between applications, etc. Very good crop safety, good rain fastness, and excellent control of both downy and powdery mildew. The mode of action, again, this is the logo of dimetamorph and the F500, which is the QOI. Total different modes of action. This one works on the cell wall of the fungus, of downy mildew, And F500 works in the complex 3 in the mitochondria. I'm going to explain that a little later. Within the life cycle of Plasmapara downy mildew, you can see right there in the beginning with the zoospores, both products can take out the fungus there, nice and early. Then it goes over to the next growth stage. That normally happens when you have water, free water on the surface of the leaf. Those are the flagella, and they move, the spores move within the water. Zoospore mobility, both active ingredients work over there. Then with the germ tube, you have the F500 and dimetamorph working over there. And then that's where F500 stops. But dimetamorph carries on working where you have mycelial growth between the cells and even sporulation. Dimetamorph works as well. So it is the combination of these two active ingredients makes absolutely sure that we control this disease. Just to repeat what I showed you there, you have zoospore formation release, both of them work, spore germination, sporangium germination, and then your dimetamorph works on the later growth stages. Okay, so what is the mode of action of these two? I'm separating the two active ingredients. The mode of action, firstly, of F500 is when that droplet lands on top of the leaf, as I said, it moves down through the leaf, it lies on top of the cuticle, and a certain portion lies on top, which is very good, because you want that crystal lying there as well, because when spores come into contact with it, it can control it. But for those that have already germinated and moved into the leaf, you want that translaminar, and especially for downy mildew, which is where it sporulates on the underside of the leaf. We get that action. So F500, when it's got a different target of action, it goes, this is now a schematic drawing of the spore, and this is a drawing of what the cell would look like within the fungal spore. And you see this here, these are the mitochondria, and the mitochondria is the energy source of most organisms. I did some training of colleagues yesterday, and I asked them if we have mitochondria. And of course, the answer is yes. Most living organisms within our cells have mitochondria, and the mitochondria is a source of energy. So this is where F500 has to go and control this disease. Okay, what they did was they took a dye. This is very clever. This is the scientists that did this. This is a spore on your left-hand side with a germ tube. And they found that if they put this dye in, the mitochondria that is very active is red, and the ones that die off are green. So you can see, I know these spots are very, very small, but here where the germ tube is, this is where cell division is happening. This is where this fungus is growing, and that's where the concentration of mitochondria is. So that's where it needs its energy. This is a mitochondria that is actively firing, it's producing energy, and that fungus is growing very, very well, as long as it hasn't come into contact with F500. The one on the right is the green one, and you'll see that's one that's been taken lights out, where it works on the complex 3. It gets very technical, but it's a specific site where it controls the disease. Now, metamorph on the other side works in a totally different area. It works on the cell wall and the cell membrane, and we'll show you now what it does. But first, before I do that, I spoke about how systemic this product is. And this is a potato leaf. It's also, of course, registered on potatoes. And what they did was they applied it to the stem at the bottom here, and they had carbon-14 mapping. This is what they do. And we can see how it moved up in the plant, acropetally, right to the top of the leaf. So this is the only area that it was applied to, and it moved totally right to the top of the leaves. And the figure shows how dimetamorph is applied in the center area and moves to the stems. In grapes, the benefit of this is for new growth, and it protects against downy mildew. And it's rapidly absorbed within the plant within 1 to 2 hours. All right, and that's a very old picture. You remember this is a product that's been around for 20 odd years. But that's a spore on the left-hand side there, where the cell wall is rupturing and the cytoplasm is pouring out of it. So that works on a total different place. It doesn't work on the mitochondria at all, like F500, only on the cell wall. This is very good. And dimetamorph is really a fine product. I told you in the life cycle where it works. So preventative in the early stages of the fungus, curative as well, although we don't promote it. Sometimes we have situations like that. And then the anti-sporulent activity is very strong with dimetamorph as well. Very few products have the anti-sporulent activity that dimetamorph has. This was a trial that was done some time ago in Washington State University. And what they did was, these are indexes or classes, and they counted the sporangia per square centimeter, and they used an untreated control at the top, and they found that it had a class 4, so in other words, it had more than 50,000 sporangia per square centimeter. All the other products that were included in that trial vary between after 6 days after infection and 15 days after infection, vary between 3, 2.8 in that area. That's probably the best they could do in reducing the number of sporangia. And dimetamorph, right at the bottom here, is in class 1. There's a very big difference between 4,000, and it's a class, and 50,000. So your source of infection is brought down totally by dimetamorph. Both on 6 days after infection and 15 days after infection. This is a trial that was done on oospores. Remember, this is the overwintering stage of the fungus of downy mildew. Cymoxanil and metalaxyl, those are just parts per million. In other words, they took the active ingredient and strengthened the dose rate. And again, dimetamorph is the DMM, right on the far side. And the higher the concentration, excellent control. 0 oospores with 2 parts per million and 0.5. And then, of course, cymoxanil and metalaxyl just wasn't anywhere near. If this represents the cell, I want to just summarize here again the action of where it works. F500 works in the mitochondria, and dimetamorph works on the cell membrane and the cell wall, and it causes rupturing of the cell. Right, resistance management. It's very important that we do manage resistance because we only have so many tools available. It takes 10 years to find a new active ingredient, and it takes, I'll show you maybe later another slide of what it costs to do it. So to get that one active ingredient to control downy mildew is very difficult. So we don't want to mess around with active ingredients and allow them to get resistance to the fungus. I want to show you that F500 is in the class 3, C3, which works on the respiratory chain of the mitochondria, and dimetamorph is total different mode of action, which is a F5, and totally unrelated. So the combination of these two, if there's any growth of a fungus, both downy mildew in this case, is resistant to F500, dimetamorph will control it, and vice versa. What's important with the FRAC information, this comes straight out of the Fungal Resistance Action Committee. FRAC, you can go onto the websites and actually print it, and it's a very good thing to have in your hand. You'll see that dimetamorph has a low to medium risk, and it's a CAA fungicide, and then the QOIs have a very high risk. And it's better to be aware of it, and there's certain ways we need to manage it. So how do we manage this? According to Frank, we said our metamorph has a low to medium risk versus metalaxyl, for instance, which is a high risk. And metalaxyl in certain areas in South Africa is totally banned on potatoes, for instance. So we don't even use that because it was mismanaged. It was an active ingredient that was totally mismanaged. So, according to Frank, dimetamorph has low to medium risk or resistance risk. That means that no resistance with a group 4. It's a group 40 is dimetamorph, and a group 4, which has this high risk, like metalaxyl, for instance, is totally a different group. No cross resistance. The QOI on the other side, which is the F500, has a high risk, and that means there are three things I want to emphasize today, that we stick to the label recommendations. In other words, I know Frank says a maximum of 3 applications. I think in Egypt it's only going to probably be used maybe once or twice for Kebrio, but in South Africa we will use QOIs 3 times within the growing stage. The important thing is that we don't spray it in a block, which means 2 after each other, but that we put another product with a different mode of action in between. So we rotate with different modes of action for both downy mildew and powdery mildew. Okay, and then of course this is a wonderful formulation because it has 2 active ingredients. The formulation already has the qualities of anti-resistance strategy. If it was just the one active ingredient, you would have to tank mix with another product with an unrelated active. So what are the watch-outs? Application timing. When the weather conditions, there's certain weather conditions, and I think we spoke about, Herbert spoke about weather prediction systems within the vineyards. I can strongly encourage that. That's done in South Africa in a big way, and they do apply according to that. Of course, on the internet, I make use of yr.no. I'm not sure if you know this website, which is very accurate also. Norwegian website for predicting if you're going to have rain. But if you need something more sophisticated, like relative humidity, temperature, and so forth, you obviously need to install a weather system or a system like that in your vineyard. Okay, maximum results can achieve through good application. Herbert also again touched on that. Bad application with a good product is also not a good thing. Make sure that what you have a very high value crop that needs to be protected, and it's a good investment to invest in your machinery as well, your sprayers and your tractors, to give good application. Interval, please stay, in this case, Kebrio Duo, between 7 and 10 and 14 days, depending on the weather conditions. If it's very dry, you can stretch it to this side of 14 days. But if you know that you're going to have rain or wet conditions, reduce your interval to 7 days. And I've mentioned this as well. Again, rotate with other modes of action your spray program. The dose rate for Kebrio Duo, as you know, is 200 mils per 100 liters. The active ingredient is a combination of F500 in that formulation over there. It's an easy formulation, a nice liquid formulation. It's got a very wide spectrum of control of diseases, even Phytophthora on potatoes, tomatoes, and so forth, and of course downy mildew and powdery mildew as well in the form of F500. Efficacy and performance. Kebrio Duo, this was a trial we think was done in Southern Europe. And that's what the SEU means. Kebrio Duo at 2.5 litres per hectare and at 2 litres per hectare against the Czech. The light green is the percent control, and the darker green is the percent infection. This was a trial, again, that was done in Southern Europe, was also at 2 and 2.5 meters, and compared to a standard, we have the active there. I won't mention what the standard is, but nice high infection, and this is infection on leaves, 70.75% infection, 98% control, and 99% control with Kebrio Duo. They're very good active ingredients within this product. This is the infection on the bunches, superb, very clean, at 73% infection. Okay, so Kebrio Duo, within Kebrio Duo, we have powdery mildew control as well. I'll focus mostly on downy mildew because we have two active ingredients that work on downy mildew, both dimetamorph and the F500. But only F500 works on powdery mildew. And this is why, when I spoke about resistance, it's also to protect you from getting resistance from powdery mildew. This was a trial we did in 2004, 2005. It was with a co-formulation of F500, and we included Vivondo and Collis as well. And those two standards that I mentioned earlier, very high percent infection and very good control of powdery mildew. So what does the registration in Egypt looks like? We have 200 mils per 100 liters of water. The spray interval, I said, was 7 to 14 days, depending on weather conditions, for both diseases, downy and powdery mildew, on table grapes. In South Africa, we also have wine grapes in that registration. And the pre-harvest interval, and I think it's for both for berries and for leaves in Egypt, is 28 days. Okay, because these are highly active ingredients, they are registered on a wide variety of crops throughout the world. We've got everything from potatoes, tomatoes, grapes, onions, garlic, melon, roses, ornamentals, cabbage, hops, tobacco, radish. Fantastic on all these diseases. And the key benefits. So we have these two very strong active ingredients. As I said, in South Africa, we don't have both in a formulation like this. I think it'd probably be too expensive for us. You know, we cannot always afford this. But we have dimetamorph and the F500, which is a very broad spectrum fungicide, both systemic. So they both move into the leaf, one translaminar, the other one acropetally. Very good. Excellent activity on the uamycetes, which is this group of fungus. High activity on other pathogens, as I mentioned earlier, Alternaria as well. Active at many stages, so it knocks it almost throughout the growth life cycle, of especially downy mildew. Preventative, curative, and anti-sporulent. There are very few products that are anti-sporulent activity. Of course, the systemic properties of it, long-lasting effect, and a very good, reliable field performance. No cross-resistance to phenol amides, especially. We're talking about dimetamorph and F500. The resistance strategy, the fact that they have two different mode of actions, means that it has a very good profile for resistant prevention. Excellent crop safety. It's safe for the consumers. For example, Tesco is used here as an example. So Kebrio Duo is a highly powerful product with two fantastic active ingredients. Okay, so it's a fungicide with positive effects of quantity and quality, and it has this broad spectrum of disease. Now I spoke about, we touched on in the video that showed excellence effect. I'm sure some of my colleagues have explained this to you. You might even recognize, because I've recognized some of those names as well, brand names that have the active ingredients in that they've found. And this is actually I think came from Brazil many years ago, where they sprayed, I think it was abacus on maize, and abacus has F500 in, and they visually saw maize that was greener, and they said, but what is happening here? And this is what they did. They then started analyzing and saying, what's causing this? Over and above the control of disease, you're getting this growth, this additional growth, you're getting this greening effect. And they analyzed it, and it basically broke it down to the next slide that I'm going to show you. But Excellence is a brand name that only belongs to BASF, and it's a brand name meaning excellence in agriculture, and it's a combination of the two words. So what happens within the plant to make it greener? We've seen yield increases on quite a few crops, and these are the three things I want to mention, which is nitrate reductase. I'm no specialist. We have specialists there with nutrients and so forth, but nitrate reductase is when you have NO3 and the plant's able to change it through the active ingredient to NO2, which is more available to the plant. The net photosynthesis increases, and ethylene, which is a hormone within the plant that causes the aging of plants, it prevents that from, reduces the ethylene production. So those are the three steps: nitrate reductase, net photosynthesis decreases plant respiration. In the one video you might have seen an instrument where they were measuring the chlorophyll on the leaf, and that has to do with excellence. And then the ethylene, which is if I was a plant, I would have a lot of ethylene in my body because I'm getting older. Okay, we decided to include this slide in this presentation. This is in Brazil in 2011. These two farmers used the normal field spray programs. On the top it's tomatoes, and the bottom one was table grapes. And then BASF said, but give us a part of your land and we will spray our spray program. And this is what they did. And afterwards they harvested it, and they found that there was 9.33% increase in yield on the tomatoes and 12.52% yield increase. And there's the farmer, and this is an area of land that was harvested, and these are tomatoes. They're very, very big. Excellence on your left, and the competitor spray program on the right. Again, I told you about the table grapes. I don't know if you are aware of these three varieties. We don't have them, but they used these three varieties in Brazil, and they found that they got an average of plus 17% in this trial. And you can see the farmers' treatments at the back, which are smaller bunches versus this area, and they obviously measured a certain area of the table grape vineyard in the background there, and this is what the yield looked like. I just want to touch on this. It's very important that because we are being exposed to many products as well that are actually substandard, I would like to show you what it does, what BASF does, and what it costs them to bring out one new active ingredient, and how important formulation is. Right at the top you will see the timeline in years. So it takes 10 years from the time they synthesize the first active ingredient, for instance F500. They found it, they see there's activity, they patent it, they start doing certain actions in making the product. You'll see the third line there is formulation. It takes 9 of the 10 years to find a formulation that is very good, so that we get the active ingredient to stick onto the surface of the leaf, which is very often, well, it's a cuticle, it's a wax layer. Okay, so liquids don't stick to that very easily. The studies happen in Germany with very clever people over a period of 10 years to find the best active ingredient with the best carrier, sticker, wetter, and formulation process. Then we showed that video earlier on about all the effects on beneficials and so forth. Those studies happen, and degradation in the soil to see what it breaks down to, and that it doesn't contaminate our soil, but that it is a chemical at the end of the day that is not toxic. That is what it costs, $272 million over a period of 10 years to bring out one active ingredient. So it's a big investment that BASF does in research, and I certainly salute these people that do this. I just want to tell you what happened. I did a trial last year at a farm. It was on wheat. I know this is a vine products that we're talking about, but I just wanted to touch on this subject of formulation. We were spraying with the farmer's tractor. I do a trial there every year, and we do different treatments. And when I got there this past season, I took all our products with, and he said to me, I've got a generic product here, and it's the generic product of one of your products. And I said, well, that's fine, let's include it in the trial, and which we did. But then I remember including generic products in my trials in the past. And I had some syringes in my car that were still wrapped, and I took the syringe out, and I said, let's just see if we can see any visual differences between formulations, because I think there's going to be a difference. And this is what we saw. The farmer, at the end of the day, showed, I took the photograph where he was holding the two syringes over there. That is direct from BASF on the right-hand side. And this here you can see where the active ingredient, or the formulation, just within a minute, separated on that. It hasn't got the viscosity that our product had. It had the same so-called active ingredient in, same ratio and everything. But this is where I say formulation is very important. And at the end of the day, it's money in the wallet versus wasted money. So I think together with you and Kebrio Duo, we're going to control downy and mildew in your vineyards. Thank you very much.